The malformed fiends, known as Gorgers, are pariahs amongst Ogor society, for they have been struck down by the empty belly curse and cannot take pleasure in gluttonous consumption. Yet the hunger they cannot satisfy grants them a terrible strength and a potent connection to the gulping god. Though there are few things that can face an Ogor, most of the great Mawtribes would agree that there is one fate that truly disturbs them: to be afflicted with the empty belly curse, which would wither away their ample guts and leave them as hollow, starving vessels unable to satisfy their gluttonous urges for even a moment. It is said that those stricken with this terrible scourge, said to be a punishment doled out by the gulping god to those ogres who displease him, find that even the juiciest cut of rhinox flank tastes like bitter ash in their mouth and dissolves into an acrid flood of bile, even as it slides down their gullet. Such is the fate of the Gorgers, who are both outcasts and figures of fear amongst Ogor society. These pallid, looping creatures lack the swaggering bulk so beloved of their kin. Instead, they lope and scuttle along on all fours, shrieking and growling in constant agony, following some distance behind the Ogor's larder wagons and gobbling up the chunks of gristle and discarded bone left in their wake. Gorgers dwell within lightless caves a safe distance from the Mawtribes' main camp, gnawing upon whatever detritus they have managed to lay their hands upon. These strange gatherings are known as Gorger Mawpacks by other Ogors, a term uttered with a mixture of unease and revulsion. Tragic and hideous creature they may be, but Gorgers still possess the fearsome strength of Ogre kind, only exacerbated by their desperate hunger. Indeed, shorn of the thick layers of blubber that surrounds the average Ogre, the true might of the gulping god's children is revealed by the wiry frame of a Gorger, with their long arms corded with muscle and powerful legs that outpace prey with ease. Their most horrifying feature is their yaw, which they can open disturbingly wide, like that of a Galatian tar python, in order to stuff huge chunks of raw flesh or living screaming victims into their mouth. So foul and tainted is a Gorger's diet, and so terrible is the curse that ravages them, that these creatures often develop grotesque mutations such as extra digits, overlong arms, and rows of extra teeth. Sometimes these growths echo the spiraling pattern symbolic of the gulping god's endless quest for sustenance. It is not known quite why sufferers of the empty belly curse thrust shards of bone through their flesh, but one theory goes that the more immediate pain distracts them from the persistent agony of their unnatural hunger. Few understand the strange troglodytic society of the Gorgers, for the rest of Ogre kind do their level best to avoid the beasts whenever possible, and anything else that stumbles into their gloomy cavern lairs is soon grabbed by filth-encrusted hands and ripped limb from limb. Only the strange gastromantic shamans known as butchers seem utterly unconcerned by these wretched victims of the empty belly curse. Indeed, around these blood-smeared figures the Gorgers congregate like loyal hounds, and even their hideous whining cries seems to abate a little. The butchers perhaps recognize that Gorgers are the truest embodiment of the gulping god's irrepressible desire to feed, which in itself is equally unquenchable. The era of the beast wrought many changes upon the warlike tribes of the wilds, its thunderous, hypnotically primal drumbeat stirring up unheard of levels of savagery and brutality in orcs, ogres, gargants, and grots alike. None but the butchers were aware, at first, of the strange effects that this violent time was having upon the Gorger packs, save that at night they began to howl in the manner of starving wolves anticipating a mighty kill. More unnerving to Ogors gathered around their campfires at night was the ever more common sight of pallid figures with lank, slimy hair crawling out of the darkness to snatch gnawed bones, rusted weapons, and other discarded tools before retreating to their fetid dwellings. Gorgers had always been known to take part in self-mutilation, thrusting shards of bone into their flesh to cause a fiery lance of agony that momentarily distracted them from the effects of the curse. They were, however, not thought to be capable of fashioning tools or weapons, and certainly it was not imagined that they might have their own strange ways of praising the gulping god. The sight of crude representations of the deity became increasingly common in those areas where the Mawtribes roamed, hashed together stick figures constructed from snapped open thigh bones or piles of offal from which protruded concentric circles of teeth. Deep in the caverns in which the Gorgers dwelt, an evolution of sorts was taking place. From each throng of Gorgers arose a clawback, a creature fiercer and stronger than its fellows, and possessed of a feral cunning. Such creatures clad themselves in the trappings of a chieftain, fashioning armor from tusks and bones, and wielding stone weapons scavenged from battlefields or slain Ogors. Although crude and rarely well maintained, these mauls could still reduce a man-sized foe to a mangled mess with a single blow, and were good for tenderizing the meat of a particularly large prey. Gorgers cannot communicate in anything more than grunts and groans, and whatever rituals they partake in have the air of bestial frenzy rather than anything organized. Captured victims are dragged back to their lairs and torn apart or hurled into crevices, while the pack joins their voices in a deafening, ululating howl. Yet for all the crudity of their behavior, it cannot be denied that wherever the Gorgers roam, the rumbling of the gulping god's belly is soon heard. Gorgers are stricken with the most horrific curse imaginable to ogre kind, a consequence of somehow displeasing the gulping god. They strive to appease their deity through gruesome flesh-eating rituals, hoping that by stuffing raw meat into his endless stomach, they might finally be relieved of their malady. As creatures who crave dank, gloomy lairs and an overabundance of creatures upon which to feed, Gorgers feel a natural affinity with the gnarlwood. Many of these monsters dwell within the forest's borders, gathering in underground caverns or the hollowed-out bowls of dead gnarlogs, which soon become encrusted with layers of filth, dried blood, and flecks of shattered bones. More than simply a feeding ground, however, the carnivorous forest has become to them a site of spiritual importance, a sacred territory of the gulping god. The most potent manifestations of this are of course the maw pits, those drooling holes in the earth that have emerged with increasing regularity throughout the gnarlwood. Whether these strange phenomena predate the arrival of ogres in the great forest is unclear, but certainly the increased rate at which they are shooing their way through its bedrock has coincided with the increased sightings of Gorgers in the region. The creatures gather around these ruptures in slavering packs, gorily devouring captives or slain beasts, wailing and thrashing their limbs, beating the ground with oversized clubs. They hurl fistfuls of flesh and offal into the quivering mouths. Such behavior was long thought completely beyond Gorgers, who were assumed to be incapable of moderating their hunger in any way, let alone offering food to another entity. That this has apparently changed is a testament to the manner in which the era of the beast has reshaped their crude society into something even more unnerving. The ogre's gruesome sacrifices are eagerly received and met by great rumblings from beneath the earth, as the Mawpits sprout bony fangs and grow wider and wider. Often these feral rituals are overseen by butchers, or the even more revered slaughtermasters, beloved of Gorgers, whom they feed with offcuts of bloody flesh and lumps of fat taken from their shopping tables. These swollen gastromancers understand the will of the gulping god better than any creature in existence, and they know that a deity's appetite can only be sated by a truly hearty meal, and what more tantalizing dish for the god of ogrekind could there be than the gnarlwood itself, with all its lethal denizens? Tear open enough Mawpits by indulging in festivals of grotesque gluttony, and the entire forest will surely slide into the gulping god's gullet. For the malformed creatures of the Gorger Mawpacks, there is perhaps a more selfish reason for their single-minded determination to appease their deity. Perhaps if they please the gulping god, then he might lift the dreadful curse that tortures them daily, so that they once more might know the satisfaction of a full belly. The butchers consider this unlikely, for their deity is not a benevolent being. Yet, if such delusions make the Gorgers more malleable, why not let them maintain their delusion? Each Gorger pack obeys the same simple philosophy shared by all tribes of Gorkamorka, that might makes right. Thus, the clawbacks that rule over these flesh-eating clans are the largest and fiercest of their kind, those that are able to maintain enough control over the empty belly curse not to devolve into utter self-degradation. Any challengers are bludgeoned senseless and usually devoured alive, their last sight that of the victor's jaw opening hideously wide to engulf their skull. Their dominance thus secured, these ogres drape themselves in animal skins and trophies in the manner of their uninflicted kin, aping the warlike grandeur of an ogre tyrant looming over his court. Moreover, most clawbacks wear headpieces fashioned from the jaws and fangs of predators that encircle their ugly heads in an echo of the gulping god's drooling maw, a crudely symbolic gesture that illustrates the belief amongst Gorgers that they are the ogre deity's true chosen, able to maintain the barest sliver of primal cunning, even when utterly consumed by the need to feed. Clawbacks lead their drooling minions on the hunt, preying upon isolated outposts of unwary patrols rather than mindlessly hurling themselves upon the first edible thing they see. Possessing all the strength of ogrekind supplemented by a desperate need for meat, they wield immense bone-crushing clubs in either hand, pulverizing their foes' skulls and splattering blood and brains all around. When the gore starts spilling, clawbacks cannot quell their vicious impulses for long, and soon their true deranged nature reveals itself. Their eyes roll over and their lips peel back over yellowed, misshapen fangs as they enter a mindless feeding frenzy, choking down clumps of steaming innards. Other gorges that stray too close to a clawback's kill risk becoming a meal themselves. None of this grants them an iota of relief from the empty belly curse, of course, but what choice do they have but to keep eating? Cave howlers are strange figures whose importance to the subterranean communities of the Gorgers is still not fully understood by the rest of Ogor society. First appearing in significant numbers during the era of the beast, some say that these ogres earned a crude form of magic from the mouths of the butchers, the Mawtribes' revered gastro-shamans. Others, more superstitious ogres, believe that cave howlers are in fact a sign that the empty belly curse is growing in potency, and that if the Gorgers do not offer greater tributes to the gulping god, they will all succumb to this most nightmarish of fates. Certainly, it often appears as if other Gorgers believe cave howlers are direct conduits of the gulping god. They treat these beings with great reverence and no little fear, often gathering to listen while the howler screeches and spits like a rabid beast. as if attending a sacred sermon. All agree that the unnatural howls that echo from the caverns with increasing regularity are truly unnerving. Possessing powers unique amongst their kind, cave howlers are able to instinctively channel the agonizing hunger that festers within a Gorger pack, and with a raw-throated cry send this crippling wave of craving smashing into the enemy. Those afflicted go mad, gnawing upon their own flesh or tearing strips of meat from their comrades, even as the cave howler scrabbles forward to join the carnage, swiping out with filth-encrusted claws. Monstrous to look upon, yet strangely piteous in their degraded desperation, Gorgers represent that most potent of Ogor nightmares, starvation. Though their hulking bodies ripple with muscle, there is hardly an ounce of healthy fat to be found on these creatures. Where a swollen Ogor gut should be, there is nothing but a concave pit. Where their unafflicted kin are ruddy-fleshed and vigorous, Gorgers are as pallid as a cavefish, with lengths of stringy, greasy hair that frames a face permanently twisted by the agony of hunger. Fellow ogres might find this appearance deeply unsettling, but to a Gorger's prey it is terrifying beyond measure, and often the last sight they will ever see. For all the suffering it causes, the empty belly curse does nothing to impede a Gorger's wiry strength, nor negate their legendary constitution. Hunching low, Gorgers scrabble across the ground towards their prey with astonishing speed, closing the distance in the blink of an eye and seizing the unfortunate being in a vice-like grip. The fortunate are swiftly battered to death with a stone club or some other improvised bludgeon before the Gorgers begin to feed, but usually the creature cannot wait to do so. They simply begin eating their victims alive, their jaws dislocating hideously wide so that they can stuff more meat down their throat without wasting time chewing. Gorgers can devour prey larger than themselves in this fashion, though even the biggest meal fails to offer them a momentary flicker of satisfaction. This is me again, chiming in to thank you for watching the video. Please don't forget to like, subscribe and comment. All of those things help me out immensely. If you feel so inclined, do consider to become a member to gain a greater influence over the content, early access, and just generally help me out. If you like this particular video especially much, feel free to click the thanks button as well to leave a small donation. All of those things are 100% optional, and I will never keep videos permanently locked behind a paywall, as my main goal is to spread the love for these games as much as possible. A special thanks to my members, whose legendary names are scrolling right before your eyes at this very instant. Don't forget, the games are not only about winning, but also creating unforgettable memories with your friends and opponents. That's it for me. See you soon. Bye bye.